life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
What I was hoping to do, and I'd like to believe it has been accomplished with the teams, was to bring George Washington to life. When I was in a college audience not long ago, a student raised his hand after I'd been talking about Lincoln and Franklin Roosevelt and Teddy, and he said, how can I ever become one of them? They're on Mount Rushmore, they're too distant. So I realized that I wanted to tell the story of them by when they were young people. They would make mistakes, they didn't know what they were doing, they were cocky, they had misjudgments, so that you could aspire to become one of them. You see him having to learn from missteps. You see him making mistakes. You see him as young. You don't think of George Washington as young, at least I don't. You just picture that guy with the white hair, that one that's on the dollar bill. But here is a young, handsome guy in the acting scenes with his hair in a ponytail and riding a horse, and he's got athletic ability and he can dance. The main thing I was hoping, which is what I hope for any book that I've ever written, is that people will feel that they're living with the person for a period of time and they can imagine what he might have been like when he was alive.
Washington understood that if he failed, the country would fail.
The way we think about a fort is not necessarily what forts were at the time.
It's the most ridiculous looking fort you could possibly imagine, and it's the actual fort. I mean, I think they filmed the fort that's in that area, and it just looks like a cardboard box. And how they thought they would keep anybody out of it is beyond imagining. I learned so much about George. I knew some things, but I feel like I was able to be a potential viewer rather than an academic watching it, so that the kind of questions that I wanted answered, because I didn't know them, are the kind of things I could say, well, what about this? When did he do this? Just because I didn't know all the connections in my mind.
When I look at Washington, I see a leader.
Come gather around, people, wherever you are.
I see a man who gave himself to service.
Admit that the water is around you.
Everything was up for grabs when Washington became president. They didn't even know, should he shake hands with the people? Because he's supposed to be like a democratic king. So he has to have some aspects of that royalness to him in terms of keeping the dignity of the office. But he's not supposed to be a king. So how often do you go and have dinner with people? Can you accept dinner invitation to go to their houses? Do they have to come to yours? What kind of clothes are you going to wear? Even what should he be called? Some people thought he should be His Mightiness, the protector of their liberties, or His Excellency. And there was some real debate about Mr. President, that there were presidents of garden clubs, presidents of community activity clubs. There's no dignity in presidency. I think the most important thing to learn is that ability to grow, that nobody comes into an office, even at any level, without having to learn so much more about the human relations involved, how to put a team together, how to be willing to have people who can argue with you and question your assumptions, how to be accessible but yet not too accessible. And all of those qualities you can watch and see grow in him over time.
Washington had a vision of what the American people could become.
It's always true that whatever person you're studying in the past probably will take actions that will disappoint you, that will not reflect perhaps a higher understanding of equality where we are today. I mean, I felt that way certainly about Franklin Roosevelt incarcerating the Japanese Americans, not opening the doors to the Jewish refugees before Hitler closed the doors forever, about even Lincoln at one point saying that blacks and whites shouldn't marry, black people shouldn't serve on juries. And you're thinking, this is Lincoln saying these things. But the point is that these people are a context of their time. Sometimes people rise above that context, but people in power in particular, people who are active in politics, are more likely to have certain kinds of answers that measure where people are at the time, or they might not be in office.
He wasn't interested in power. He had power.
He wanted us to be independent and steer our own course.
We were able to reach President Clinton and General Powell, and they both did a great job. I mean, we thought with both of them there might be one bite or so, but General Powell really understood what it was like to be a general and take responsibility and see the blood on the ground. and to discipline the troops, even though it seemed pretty harsh to be whipping them when they were about to disappear. And with President Clinton, too, we had hoped for best maybe that there'd be in a couple bites where he'd talk about the fact that he only served 2 terms and it set a precedent for all the other presidents, and that he created the presidency. But he actually knew about the Battle of Yorktown, and he knew about his being raised by a single mother, and he knew about his inadequacy and feeling that he hadn't gone to higher schooling, so that he always felt that lack of confidence. It was really interesting what was in his head. It was a lot that was in his head.
He's really not a rebel. He's a reluctant revolutionary.
So what makes us a nation? 2 things, the Constitution and George Washington.
Obviously, I think most people know that he had teeth, but they were real teeth. They were living people's teeth. But it was a contraption that was extraordinary. In the last episode, you watch him having to put the teeth in before he's going to give his second inaugural. And it takes a long time, and it's very painful. And then that explains something that I'd always wondered: why do we very rarely see him smiling? Because I just wanted it. The nice thing about the acting in there, when George is young, every now and then you'll see the actor who plays him almost make a smile, and you think, yay!
He is a little stern.
Yeah, but that's the facial expression that he had evidently much of his life because of the lack of confidence in speaking. We've got a movie company called Pastimes Productions, which I love the word pastimes because it's not only past times, but it's when you have a vocation. We both love movies and working together on them. So we're working on possibly a few more documentaries on some more of these character presidents, and possibly a movie about Ida Tarbell, who was a heroine in The Bully Pulpit. And she was the journalist who broke up Standard Oil, and she's a heroine of mine. And we've got a couple other things that we're thinking of doing, too. So it's fun. I haven't yet figured out yet another big fat book to write. They take me so long. It takes me 10 years to write Lincoln. It took me longer to write the book about Franklin and Eleanor and World War II than it took World War II to be fought. But in the meantime now, we can do documentaries and movies, and they don't take as long as that. Lincoln still took a long time to be made. But this is fun for a while, and maybe we'll stay what I do.